Hi, welcome back to VME Vaginismus, Let's Name It, Not Shame It. My name is Audrey Cairo, and I'm just going to call this Series 2. And I'm not even sure what that means, because it might be that we've taken a little bit of a pause to reflect on where we might want to go with the podcast. And one of the things that I really was wanting to do is in this coming series is to speak to people who have been challenged or where they've had a challenging relationship with their vagina or with their V, but who done something with it, if it's either to help others or to support, if it's by creating, by writing, etc. But let's see what happens, because to be honest, I start these things and I never know really exactly where it goes. But I have to say that I feel I'm just starting with something that just blew my mind, even before I did the podcast with her, because on a random day I decided to connect with Emily Sauer, who's the inventor of the Ohnut. If you don't know what the Ohnut is, this might be a great time for you to do a quick Google search and find her or find the product, so you have a bit of idea what it is. But I cannot tell you how excited, of course, I was to get connected to her, to have her for an hour or so, just to have a conversation. So Emily herself, she will share her story with us. She had been challenged by painful sex, or let's call it the dyspareunia. Let me just see if I pronounce that right, because who knows? Dyspareunia. Okay, so, or painful sex. And literally, what has come out of that or that experience, she will talk us through, how she was in that time. But she literally came up with something really amazing, which you might have heard about, which is for different people. It might not work for everyone, but it at least gives power back in our hands, which is the Ohnut. Besides the Ohnut, she's an amazing entrepreneur, because I feel that the moment that she stepped into this, that all kinds of things might have happened for her. And I hope this is not the last time I speak to her. Let me say, I have been geeking out the whole day about this already, but she's just amazing. So I really hope that you give this a listen and let us know what you think. Okay, so welcome, Emily. You can unmute yourself.
Oh goodness, I'm in New York City, so there's a truck. Right as soon as you turned the cord, a truck drove by. I was like, but I don't want to interrupt her.
Oh, that's completely. Let's see what happens in the coming time anyway, because anything can happen. What time is it where you are?
It is 11:11 in the morning.
11 in the morning. Okay, over here it's around 4 something, and it's a bright sunny day. It's very warm already. And with this whole crazy COVID time, you never know when the postman comes. So even if there's a truck, a postman, if anything needs to happen, it just happens, isn't it, these days?
Yeah. Oh my gosh, I love that the postman is the symbol of cars passing, where it's sirens and police car. Oh my God, and there's actually a motorcycle shop on the street, so we've got the motorcycle egos driving by that are louder than maybe the sirens. So listen, it's a time of being alert.
Being alert. But every time when I start a podcast, I'm saying how excited I am. But today I had this weird moment that I was like, am I excited or am I nervous? What is it, Audrey? And I was like, no, it's excitement. It's excitement. So I just want to say, I think I'm going to change the word of excitement one day. But I'm so excited to have you. So welcome, Emily, to VME, the VME podcast.
Oh, real fast. What's really actually interesting? The physiological response to excitement and nervousness is actually the same. The body feeling is the same. It's just our language that defines it one way or the other.
Exactly. That's the reason why I had to check in with myself, right? Because I'm like, what's going on? Okay, just calm down, make yourself a tea.
You
It's such
chose
a
the excitement
I
one.
chose excitement. But
Nice.
welcome to the VME podcast. I am really, really happy to have you here today. I can just not even, like I've of course heard about the Ohnut, and there was a moment that I don't know, let's say Google or someone threw in the ad of the Ohnut in my little on my phone, and then I saw you speak, and I saw a video, and I was like, oh my God, how amazing would it be to speak to her?
Oh, it's so wild. I don't know what like, it's so funny. There's so much content online now, and just never know where any of it's going to end up. And especially in the wake of facing so much rejection on Facebook advertising, it's and there's a lot of commentary around like Facebook's ethics and everything like that. But with our content, providing education is like our main goal. And I'm just grateful that you were able to see it in the first place.
Yeah, it came through, like, I of course I'm following Onat and I'm following you on Instagram. So for whatever reason, it ended up with a video. And then I was like, oh, of course there's a person behind this little thing, right? So let me see who this person is. When I saw the ad, I was like, okay, let's find more. And then I was like, how great would it be to have her on the podcast to hear a story? And it was me just randomly sitting on my sofa thinking, I'm just going to write a message. And then before we know it, I heard back and I was like, what? So this is happening.
Yeah, like I mean, I so appreciate your gesture to do that, because that's how Ownut started, right? Like I, had my own personal experience with painful sex and all kinds of issues that I didn't know how to deal with, and I had the audacity. I will call it audacious. I had the audacity to think outside the box, to start going to medical conferences, to place myself in circumstances where people, with people that I looked up to, and where I had no real place of like being. I didn't really fit in. And
Mm.
ultimately, when you believe that you are meant to be there, then people believe that you are meant to be there.
Mm.
So good job on reaching out. And it's wonderful, just as much for me to be here as well.
How I mostly start is to ask a bit of maybe a random question, and mostly they're the same. Or the people I've spoken to so far have had like their own vagina story or their own vaginismus story, or their own V, because the V stands for like actually the name I've given to my vagina. But let's say it can also stand for vagina.
Mhm.
So I would want to just ask you a similar question of saying, if you had a word that could describe your current relationship with your vagina at the moment, like what word would you use? What's the first word that comes into mind?
Honestly, the first word that came to mind is friends. I'd say we're friends.
Yeah.
It's been nice getting to know her. Sometimes we don't get along. But I've been in actually a very healthy relationship for the last like almost 2 years now, and she gets along with him too. So
That's a plus.
I would say she's very friendly, but that might be misconstrued. So yeah.
So it's friends. So what I would love this to be is to maybe see how this friendship blossomed in a way, right? Because there's of course a story of how the Onut came to exist, but then there's also a story how you came to that point of actually developing it in a way. And yeah, so if we think about your friendship with your V, could you give us a bit of an insight about what your friendship story has been?
Yeah, I mean, it's such a, I love that question. I do love that question very much, because I think, the initially I'd say we were strangers, very much so. And um, I had pain during sex for the entirety of my sexual existence. I mean, it was specific to deep pain during sex. So when penetration went too deep, there was like a really sharp pain, and my body kind of clenched up. But I never really mentioned it to any of my partners, because I just figured that it was normal. And when I looked online, like I didn't have the vocabulary to understand what the search results were telling me. And it was just ultimately, people ask me all the time, like, what did the research look like before you discovered or like created Ohnut? And ultimately it's like, if you're told to go swimming in a cold lake and you dip your toe in and it's freezing, you're not going to willingly go in for like a leisurely swim. So I kind of retreated from that direction. And then my doctors, I mean, you've heard this many, many times. We go to doctors and they're just like, everything's fine. Nothing checks out wrong. Just try a little lube, try different positions, and, you'll be great. Bye.
Bye.
And at that time, I didn't know what my vagina deserved. And I didn't know what, it's so fun talking about it in the third person. I didn't, she felt like a different entity than who I defined myself as. I defined myself as a confident person who is very outgoing, and I love starting conversations that might be uncomfortable. Like, I really like getting the good stuff out of, like, I love kind of people I love talking through challenges with people and personal doubts, and really, I'm kind of like the cheerleader mentality. If like at any of those Myers-Briggs tests, it's kind of how I roll. But I didn't approach myself that same way. And over the course of 10 years of not dealing with an issue, it got worse. And finally, I was in a bad relationship, and every time that sex was painful, I basically just destroyed myself along with it. It was just a reminder of everything that was misaligned in my life. And it really just tanked my entire self-esteem.
Yeah. But what I can hear is that over the years, that cheerleader, like, did that cheerleader change on the outside, or was that like just thinking about you and sex, or was that you as a person, your personality as well, that went like?
Oh, for sure. I mean, it's like when you seek the support that you think is available or should be available, or you look for answers that aren't there, and nothing is validating, and our clinicians who we're supposed to trust don't think that you have a problem, or that I had a problem worth solving, then what am I left with but to internalize that pain and blame myself? I completely blamed myself, not for causing the issue, but for just having it. And I felt like I was completely broken. And so, yeah. And then that alongside being in a relationship that was just like bad, like all the red flags.
Yeah.
And those kinds of relationships where you're just like in a constant state of repair. It's like, we had a good day, we had a bad day, we had a good day, but it's like, oh my God, it's just left. Oh, it's terrible. But yeah, that cheerleader, I didn't know who I was anymore. I really didn't. And it's just a shame, because in sexual health and in sexual education for a mainstream audience and for a clinical audience, we minimize sexual health to this like gratuitous, pleasure-filled, orgasm, sticky, ooey thing, when in fact it so much impacts our quality of life, which impacts our health as a result.
Yeah. As we said at the start, or maybe even before, is that, or if I think about why I'm doing these conversations and why I am coaching, like, it's because it's like, I know myself how it is when you internalize it, and it's really easy to disappear in that for a while, right?
Yeah.
And I'm curious of what happened then for you to step out of, or not step out of that. Maybe that's not the right way to say it.
There's like a breaking point.
Yes.
Like
what was the switch?
Yeah, like you get to a point of, I got to such a point of despair and sadness, and then I got frustrated at my despair and sadness, and that frustration grew into like a burning like need to figure something out. Like, I'm inherently a problem solver. Like, I love solving problems. It drives my entire existence. And God damn it, I was gonna like try something. Oh my God, I couldn't do nothing and I wouldn't even call it nothing. I couldn't just keep doing the things that I was doing. And I literally, I was in a car driving to work one day with a coworker who I actually had just met. And we put on music and we were like singing to the music and we were like dancing in the front seats, and we decided to pull over at this like orchard to play in these hay barrels. And she and I just got along so well. And somehow we just got into like life stuff. And I came out to this stranger for the first time saying that sex was painful. And we just got into like, oh my God, like, what can we do about it? It's like, what if you put a donut on a penis to make it shorter? And I was like, oh my God, that's hilarious. Wait a minute. And the idea of a pink frosted donut on a penis was like the antithesis of the self-destruction that had, previously existed. And at that point, it was just this beaming light that guided my entire world. Because it was at that point that I could talk to, like, I went home and I ordered, something similar online, and that wasn't hygienic, and I would not recommend to you for sex. But, proof of concept was there immediately. Yeah. Like the first time I tried the original Ohnut prototype, and sex wasn't painful in the positions that I had always expected it to be painful. It was like, it was like a degree of triumph that I had never felt in my life. I was like free of that blame. I was free of my own sense of inability, and I could do anything. It was really, really, really powerful.
Yeah. It sounds like it as well. Like, even
your question at all. I just like
no, like I'm listening because I'm also like seeing you in this car with like your friend or your colleague, and like having like a switch happening there in a way. Was that one of the first times you spoke to someone about this, besides the medical field or besides the doctors you've been to?
Yeah, I mean, I had told one close friend, but she just didn't know like what to do with it. I kind of mentioned it in passing, and she was just like, oh, okay. Because I tried to bring it up like casually, like, oh, this isn't a big deal, or like, this like bigger thing is wrong. Oh, by the way, sex is painful. But I didn't bring it up with a sense of confidence, and so it wasn't received with a sense of importance, maybe, or significance. But after realizing what was possible in my body and in my sense of self, I literally talked to everybody, anybody who would listen or ask, or like, and it starts, the conversation always started from a place of I never asked, I didn't push anyone else for their experience, but it was just like, I came up with this crazy idea because sex is painful when during like these positions, and like, how crazy is that? What do you think of this idea? And they'd be like, wait a minute, you have painful sex? Like, I have painful sex too, or I've been with someone who's had painful sex. Like, wait, this is real? Like, yes, oh my God, it's so real. And then it would be like these, I would go into like groups of people and like plant the seed of this little like crazy idea that I'd come up with, and then I would leave and come back 2 hours later and they would still be talking about it. Like, it's just like this like floodgates of relief that come from anybody, whether or not you've yourself experienced it, because it's all something that we want to know. Like, we're all living in these bodies that we don't understand. And it's like, how can, like, oh, here's like yourself. Let me say hello.
Yeah.
And it's like, oh my God, you're like shaking your own hand. Like, it's so nice to meet you.
So, because like what I understand is like you had this eureka moment. You tried to, or maybe I'm not sure if you're in the kitchen yet creating the Ohnut yet, but like, did you then like, because what you said, the floodgates opened because there was this like, okay, we're creating this and I'm going to tell the world about this idea about for myself. But then all these other people came up with, oh, can we talk about this? As if you've given them permission, you say, in a way, to talk about their own sexual experiences in a way.
Totally. And listen, again, like, I was in a really bad place. And all of a sudden there was this like wave of positivity. And so just like the motivation for me to develop on it. And like you said, yeah, the way that I actually started developing my own prototypes, I went to the local art store and I picked up like a DIY silicone kit. It's called RTP silicone, room temperature vulcanized. If anyone wants to play around at home, it's very, very easy. You like mix part A, part B, and it cures, like it gets hard. But yeah, and then I worked with a couple different engineers, and the testing process was actually really interesting. And we can get maybe we'll pause on that.
Because I'm curious about you had the idea, but how did you then, like, did that switch instantly then also went to my vagina is my friend?
Ooh, okay.
How did that
that for a second and like go back and like my vagina is my friend? Yeah, it was actually really interesting. I would say like my vagina is my friend. Now I can repair the rest of myself. And we ended that relationship, and that summer I went on a trip and really just I actually just like fell in love with myself. I hit rock bottom, like even more bad things happened. That was like a crazy summer. Like my grandmother died. I had to like change all these plans. Like there was like a whole bunch of things. And I felt, anyways, all that to say, it laid a foundation for me to actually like fall in love with myself for the first time. Yeah.
So in that summer when you fell back in love with yourself, in a way, what happened next?
I realized like after that summer, I felt a sense of like I felt bigger than myself almost, and that I had such a deep mission to educate and to help a completely unsupported population, and that became the drive. I took those leaps of faith. Like I contacted people who I contacted engineers knowing nothing about engineering. I started going to hardware meetups in New York City to meet hardware folks. I did throughout the prototyping process. When I landed on the final one, I bought tickets to go to sexual medicine conferences. And I did all the research in advance. I was like, who are the top 5 people that I need to know? And I showed up at this conference and made myself very visible to those people.
I'm like, was like, hello. What did you do?
Yeah, I went up to them and I just introduced myself and they were like, oh, what do you do? And the moment I said I was a patient, they put on their doctor hat and they were like, oh, what are you doing here? How's it going? What's wrong? And I whipped out my little at-home prototype that actually looked quite good. And they understood the value immediately.
Okay.
Because the clinician's toolkit is just as lacking as our own. They have very little options to offer, and they're not incentivized to offer beyond surgical procedures and medication. So to them, Ohnut, they wanted to get on board immediately. I built the scientific advisory board at the first conference that I went to.
Wow.
And it was also just really such a relief to meet the people that were specialists that did care after having been dismissed for so long. It is also just wild to think that, and I learned so much going to this. Like, honestly, it's wild. Like, I feel like everyone should be able to go to medical conferences just to learn. You learn about the biopsychosocial models. You learn about the fear response cycle. All of the, like, what are the new developments in hormone treatments? Do they work? Do they not? What about like laser therapies? It's just this like menu of all of these answers that we've all been looking for so long. And it's only accessible to like this tiny group of specialists.
Yeah.
And I was like, this is not okay. I felt like I was a detective. I was like, what is this system that we don't know that we're in? And how can I tear it down?
Yeah. And you know what? Like, I don't know why something just like this thought comes into mind is that you have this conference you went to with these specialists who all wants to help and were interested and curious. and being like, yeah, let's see what we can make happen here. But then we had also like a history of years going into our doctor's office and maybe not getting the help or the assistance in a way. Like, this may be a bit off track, just a random question, but where do you feel that it might just then, where does the information stop? Right? Because we have like the specialists in this small conference, or maybe it's big conference actually, who knows?
Yeah.
But then
No,
we
so
have
people, med school education is focused on infection and disease. So that's like infection disease, like cancer, childbirth. It does not generally include pain, especially if it's life-threatening, if it's not life-threatening. So, and not to mention that female reproductive or just like pelvic health research has been limited to a couple of decades. Yeah, women weren't included in research trials until the 90s, I believe. Like hysteria wasn't taken off of the DSM until like the 80s. We're just like behind the times as far as research goes. So, gynecologists, even though they're like very well intended, the education that they're given is not sufficient to actually help treat. Sorry, there's one of those motorcycles.
There they go. Yep.
Their education is not sufficient to actually treat like deeper pelvic health issues. The problem that I find is that if GYNs, especially OB-GYNs, don't have that education, that's fine, but direct us where to go. Do we go to a pelvic PT? Should we seek a urogyn, a different kind of pelvic specialists, so that we can get the help that we need? And then how can that help be accessible? Because a lot of these specialists are cash-based practices because insurance doesn't cover it. So it's like all of these components of the system don't support people with vaginas and their pelvic health. It's quite complex. So anyways, all that to say, with Ohnut, what we're really trying to do is instill a sense of education and agency at a foundational level so that we can at least advocate for ourselves.
Yeah. Maybe I want to maybe take it one step back and then also one step forward. So maybe I should just start with the one step back, really. Sure. Like in that time when you were creating the Ohnut, like, did you find out what was causing the pain at all?
You just like, how there's like a staple, like the company Staples, there's like an easy button. You just push my hard button. This is like the hard one. I think that after years and years and years of denying the significance of my own health, it was still easier, even when I was developing Ohnut, to ignore the root cause. It was almost easier to not know than it was to know. And I think, I love Ohnut with all of my heart, and I think it is very helpful, but it doesn't address the root cause. It's a piece of the puzzle that helps on the path to, mental and physical health, but it's not like a silver bullet or anything like that. So it still took me a while, even after I had come up with Ohnut, to go to a pelvic floor PT to figure out what was wrong. Yeah. And along those lines, it took me a really long time to even speak up during sex when it was painful, because I had suppressed that for so long. At one point in a relationship, my partner had sat me down and he was like, Emily, I need you to tell me what positions are painful. I need you to tell me, like, what is your, like, if you do this thing with your hands, if you like hold my hips this way, or if your legs squeeze this way, like, what does that mean? Should I be looking at your face? Will you be making certain sounds? And we like literally went through every single thing that would indicate that I was in pain if I couldn't speak up. And from that point on, when I didn't have the confidence or the compassion for myself, my partner could advocate for me. And that was a really pivotal point in my existence.
Yeah. Like, even when you said it touched your heartstring, it touched my heartstring too, because that's where it's so difficult, right? It's like we've created something which is great, which we get hope out of, and which is actually outside of us as a like like not saying like a magical tool, but like a tool or something that might take away a certain pain. But then we also have you as Emily, as a person who then, what you said, can still reflect back now and say, but I was at that time still kind of maybe ignoring something, because maybe you weren't ready at that time. Yeah.
And I, in the Ohnut box, there's actually a letter that I spent a long time writing. I mean, it's such a complex issue to walk towards and to confront. It really is. It's a version of ourselves that we are afraid of oftentimes. And how can we be open enough to meet that? I love this like third person thing. Anyways,
yeah, let's keep doing it. Yeah.
When I created the branding around Ohnut, I didn't want the product to be this like, this can solve all your problems, this is the answer. Like, I wanted to, there's actually a fear in me that was worried that people would trust it too much. And like, what if it doesn't work? And ultimately, like, we have some stressful days and we have some amazing days, and sometimes sex feels good and sometimes it hurts. And we have to give ourselves room for that, and not, and I think that breadth of patience is almost as important as finding the thing that can help actually reduce that pain. So I intentionally took myself, like before I wrote on the packaging, into a very, very deep, like, emotional space, and went back and thought of all of the things that I wanted to hear when I needed to hear them the most. And that is what's on the packaging right now. So there's a letter inside. Do you mind if I read it?
No, I actually wanted to just ask, like, can you read it for us?
Yeah. Have you heard it?
No.
Okay. It says, "You made it. A big congratulations, not only on your new Ohnut, but also on all the hard work that led you here. The journey is never easy. I tell you with my full heart, you are sexy exactly the way you are. You're a problem solver, a shoulder to lean on, a spreader of joy. You put a lot of love out there, and you deserve to live that love you share. So in the spirit of curiosity, embrace adjustment, awkward moments, and small mighty victories. And know deep down, but not too deep, that you're doing great. Now go play. All of my love, Emily." Yeah.
That is beautiful. Like, I'm just having a moment as well, like feeling a bit, whew.
Yeah.
And that was a letter to yourself.
I mean, it's something that we all need to hear. And especially people who, again, feel so unsupported in a part of our lives that is so intimate to the way that we, to our outlook, and also just it's hopefully bonding as well. The fact that these words can be so shared, and this experience can be so shared, is just a reminder that we're not alone in it. Yeah.
So you mentioned already that your new partner, when he sat you down and said, okay, you need to just let me hear your voice, speak up, like, I need to hear, like, so that was a crucial moment in a way. What else has helped you to now get to where you're now?
Well, I mean, I still have my detective hat on. I still feel like, man, it's just like there are so many nooks and crannies that are so undiscovered. Like, one of the reasons why I created Ohnut was because I had difficulty talking to a doctor. And so we created the Pain Perception Project. Like, our Ohnut team, it's a free resource, but basically it's this online intake form that has questions about your pelvic health, but also includes sexual health and quality of life. So it's really, and it helps us understand the scope of our own experience so that we can better articulate it when we actually show up to a doctor and have a very short window of time to say what we need. It's amazing because it's like oftentimes we don't think like where it hurts, how long it hurts, at what time of the month, but also how does this impact our quality of relationships? How does it impact the way that we approach work? There are just like very fundamental quality of life questions that doctors don't often ask. Like, how often do you go to a doctor and they're like, what is your goal? Like, what is your goal with this treatment plan? It's like, oh, well, I would actually just like to be able to be intimate with my partner and feel good about going about my day. Not like, I want hormones with crazy side effects. Like, like there's just so often a lack of dialogue in that way. And then another piece of the puzzle that we just discovered recently during quarantine was that people were asking us at Ohnut for pelvic health exercises that they could do because they couldn't go to their pelvic PT. And I was just like, well, we're versed in a lot of these areas, but don't have like the clinical expertise or like the legal, like we're not willing to take those legal risks by offering that kind of information. So we created what's now called Pelvic Gym. And it's an online resource of at-home video content that you can follow along with to do certain follow-up exercises with your PT.
Amazing.
What's so cool about it? Like, like for instance, dilator therapy is really important. It's also really hard to keep up with. And, and a lot of people drop off because it's painful. It can be embarrassing. It's cumbersome. It's like, and it's a really long process. So we've created a lot of videos now where someone's actually doing those exercises with you, where they take you through dilator meditations, or there's like body scans, and they guide you through it. They do like clocks, like with with different myofascial release techniques, and it's really it's wonderful just to have a buddy in a lot of these environments where we'd otherwise be by ourselves.
Yeah, that is amazing. Like I literally just, because I was, of course, doing a little bit of my research just before, and I was like, okay, so I saw Lady Bits League. I'm not sure if you're still doing that, but then like the Pain Perception Project. I was like, oh, so I went online. I was like, oh, that's actually amazing, because what you say, you can go online, fill out a questionnaire, and then likely it might sum it up so that you can then bring it. Yeah, and then you can bring it to your GP or to the doctor, to anyone in a language that might sum it all up for them. What happens with the research? Is it going somewhere as well? Like if we think about the different stages of pain, because that's quite interesting, right? Because my pain threshold, your pain threshold, I'm not really sure how that, how can we measure that in a way?
Yeah, it's a wonderful question. I mean, the way that we approached it in the beginning, and we also we're running a company, so we have to just be careful how much time, resource we put into it. But the idea was initially to offer this as an educational tool for people, again, to self-advocate within a privacy context. Privacy was of utmost importance to us, and we didn't want to objectify any of the search results. And we're not actually, it's so funny, I'm like hearing myself now, like, should we be doing something with that data? But just that there's so much legal nuance around it that we wanted to just play it safe, at least to start, and make sure that people just felt a sense of security in filling out the form. So it is like HIPAA compliant and
okay.
secure.
Yeah. But then you said the pelvic gym, where I'm like, especially because, of course, thinking about like, as you know, like I've been speaking to a lot of women with vaginismus, and everyone is about like let me start again with that, because not everyone is about dilating, but it's a lot about like, in the UK, if people are advised to dilate, that's very common in a way, but then they're home with the dilator thinking, what I'm gonna do, how much, how long? Where personally, when I went through vaginismus, I literally was like, I don't like this thing. And it wasn't a sexy dilator. And I've said this millions of times, but it wasn't what you said. It was me being, okay, so now I'm at home with this. let me just store it in the in my cupboard somewhere for when I feel that I'm ready. But how amazing is it when there is some place to turn to online, that you have a pelvic blood, a pelvic gym buddy, really.
Yeah, yeah. And all the providers on the platform are pelvic floor PTs.
Amazing, amazing,
Pelvic
amazing.
physiotherapists.
And
Yeah.
is that for everyone? Could that be used worldwide for people?
Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah.
awesome. Okay, okay, okay.
Uh,
So yeah, if you don't mind, I will likely ask for all the details so I can just add it and
Absolutely.
below
I mean,
the below the.
I'd actually be so curious to hear, because in your own experience, how did you find that motivation to kick off? Like, what was there a spark that made you feel confident to
Dilate to
Yeah.
dilate. So when I got my first dilator, it was like 2004. So let's just, and this was in the Netherlands. So let's say the dilators now are so much sexier and likely have been developed in a much better way. Mine was very clinical, and it was like as if it was like a balloon type of thing. So you had to insert it and it just like pump it up, and then it will have a weird balloony type of shape. But I also went to PT. So that was for me literally the best thing like ever, because I got to know my body and I got to know my muscles, and on a little screen see what my muscles were able to do. So, and at the time I was seeing someone, so we were also like playful with it, but it was more about when I had to practice it by myself that I never really like. I remember in my mom's house in the bedroom like having to try it out, and
In your mom's house.
in my mom's, I was living at my mom's,
Yeah.
I was 24 at the time, and I was living at my mom, and I was like, oh, really? Like, I don't know if in that moment, if there was any specific, spark of me doing it. But I think I was lucky because I was like, okay, if this is not going to be it, like I will still practice with my partner. Like I'm not going to necessarily walk away from that. Like when we broke up, I wasn't necessarily shying away from sexual activity necessarily. I was making sure that who I would do it with or wanted to do it with, that I would be like open and honest about it, and like taking it easy and being kind about it. So that my confidence was not knocked to the full in a way, because of course over the years my confidence had been knocked. But I think that little device, that was just because it was so like, it was really, really medical in a way. That was just also a reminder in a way, where now I'm so happy to see different types of dilators, that it could also be also vibrators who which is a bit different, right? Where with me, the one I had, there was literally nothing else that you can do then to pump it up really, like, but not in a party way.
It's like you have this inanimate thing that's pathologizing. It's like just by looking at it, it's saying to you that something is like, it's like, it's what does it say? It's so interesting how design or branding can change the whole dynamic with this thing that you're holding in your hands.
Exactly. And I remember putting it away and like literally let it collect dust, and then taking it out and be like, okay. But it wasn't like now when I hear people talk about dilating much, it's like personally, I'm like, for me, that wasn't the trick that got me to, overcome, or I don't know how I would say, like to continue with my challenge of vaginismus, or to overcome vaginismus. Because I always say it's like a bit of a driving the car situation, like I've been using this analogy for a while now, that using dilators like as if you're having driver's lessons and you're in a car with someone and you're practicing, and then all of a sudden you're having a real car there, another car, you by yourself solo, and you have to learn how to drive that car as well, which could be a partner, right? So I didn't put all my money on necessarily dilating, but more about the mind body connection in a way, about how am I feeling when I am in these type of situations as well, with a partner or with myself. And what you said again, like our friendship with my V and your V, or
Yeah.
our V.
Harvey.
Our
It's so
V.
funny. It's like we have universal V's right now.
Yeah,
Like after you talk about your vagina so much, it's like one vagina for all.
exactly,
It's all going
exactly.
up. And
Yeah,
I love that framework around it's not just dilating isn't just the physiological re-education, it is the psychological re-education. And with all these new products coming out that just help re yeah again like re-educate like what the context can be,
yeah,
what how to make. Oh, okay, I'm gonna cut myself off, but yeah, I appreciate that distinction very much,
yeah,
actually. I would
yeah,
love to also, just like on a side note, I would love to talk to you again, because I think because we've gotten so much feedback from hypertonic pelvic floor folks at Pelvic Gym, just to talk you through like the nuance of um, dilation and the motivations and everything, because uh, so far we're seeing a lot of positive feedback in this area
yeah.
specifically.
And this is the thing, like I think like I am completely, especially when you say there's a pelvic gym, I'm like, yeah, I'm going to tell the world about this right now, just because it's so, to me it's so important for women to know their muscles, right?
Yeah.
And we just are not educated. Like it's so such a weird thing. Like it's like, when we're younger, we've been taught how to hold our pee in a way, but no one knows, like, how does like a kid all of a sudden know that they how to hold their pee? Like that just happens. All of a
Yeah.
sudden they don't wet the bed kind of thing. But we never really go into, okay, so what actually happens around that area for us? Like what muscles are there? Like what muscles are there for us to tighten up and to open up, or and I think that PT is just like, for me, what I said, when I knew the control that I could have or how my muscles work, that was really empowering. And so yeah, so definitely, like, do tell me anything that's about that, because
Yeah.
I feel everyone should know. But that might be another time. But but
Yeah.
I because one thing that I just I realized that we actually didn't really say about, what does the Ohnut do?
We'll edit this out and put it in the beginning.
you know
So, Ohnut is this very friendly wearable. We call it a wearable because it's not a sex toy and it's not a medical device, but we developed it with renowned clinicians so that it could be applicable in both scenarios. But it's this wearable that allows couples to customize penetration depth. So, for anyone who experiences pain when penetration goes too deep, Ohnut is this it's a series of rings, like stacking rings. Imagine the kids. Have you ever seen that Fisher Price toy where it's like the stacking rainbow donuts on a peg?
yep,
Okay,
yep,
so
yep.
think of that. So they're worn at the base of a penetrating partner. So that could be at the base of a penis. It could be a toy. It also could be a dilator. And what it does is, again, it allows you to control how much of that penetrating partner or object goes in. Another wonderful thing about it is that because the rings stack, you can take them off or add them at any time during any position if you're using it during sex. So what's cool about that is that it opens up this dialogue where before there was shame and internalizing, or like, I don't want to ruin the moment, or like, it's not painful enough to say something, or it's like so painful that I'm screaming now. All of a sudden there's room to say, how does this feel? Let's add another ring. Like, can we try this position? All of a sudden there's this catalyst to initiate and offer it and ask for feedback.
Okay. Yeah, because like I've seen it, but then I was like, how does that? But then, of course, as after research, I do know, but I'm happy that you explained it for the listeners, because we've been nutting it away for the last hour, where everyone's like maybe Googling at the same time when they're listening. It's like, what is the Ohnut? What is it? But actually, I do think that it's been mentioned a lot in different talks with people with vaginismus
Oh,
as well. So that's the amazing thing. So
that's
let me just quickly check in with you with time, because I think it's almost time for you
yeah,
as well,
yeah.
already to go. Because one, let me just say thank you. But before we go, can I just ask you the two questions that I mostly end with? Was, what is it you know now that you wish you knew then? And if you have any tips for anyone who's listening.
What I know now that I didn't know then, I think fundamentally is that communication is our biggest asset. Communication with a partner, communication with ourselves, communication with a provider. And it is that builds a sense of confidence, a sense of capability, and it gives us the tools that we can then use to advocate for our health. I think without communication, we end up in this state of isolation and solitude and doubt. With communication, there's a sense of connectedness and possibility.
Thank you. That's amazing. And if I would say you are not your condition, whatever the condition might be, but you are?
Oh my God. Can I tell you my first answer is so weird? I am not, I honestly, I feel like, I feel so weird saying this, but I am Ohnut.
You're Ohnut.
Ohnut is, maybe Ohnut is me.
Ohnut is you. You are Ohnut.
I don't know. It's so weird. Ohnut just represents a sense of ownership. And with that sense of ownership comes creativity. And that is, and with that creativity comes a sense of play.
Amazing.
And that is at the core, the part of myself that I love. And I hope to share that with other people.
And I am sure you will. Let me just thank you from the bottom of my heart, literally. It's been so amazing to have you. Like, I hope it's not the last time we speak, because I'm like, oh my God, Audrey, did you ask everything that you wanted to ask? But I'm like, because I feel that we could have gone left, right, up, down, deep, but like, yeah, we just trying to put everything in one. But can I just thank you so much for taking the time to speak and to share part of your story. Yeah. And just to create and for creating Ohnut, because I've seen some of the testimonials on your page, and it's amazing. And I love how everything is there, and as well how men and women are both letting
across gender,
exactly.
Across sexual orientation. It's really it's pretty special. Yeah, I would suggest if anyone's having any doubts or questions, just to read the reviews.
Yeah. So where can they find Ohnut?
Ohnut.co. Or you can just Google Ohnut, and we're, OHNUT, and we're at the top.
Amazing.
And then if people want to check out Pelvic Gym or the Pain Perception Project, they're also linked on Ohnut as well.
Okay. I will add all the links as well at the bottom of the podcast notes somewhere for them people to find. But thank you so much. It's been a real pleasure.
I so appreciate your questions and your care. You're doing such wonderful work. And I would love to talk again. If there's anything that you want to dive into, or if any people have follow-up questions, like please let me know.
Woohoo! I think that you're going to regret that. You're going to regret that. I'm going to be like, what else can we talk about? So yes. But I know that you have to go, so you will definitely hear from me again. But thank you for your time today. And I would say, to everyone's listening, I hope you enjoyed it too. So speak again soon. This was the VME podcast, Vaginismus, Let's Name It, Not Shame It, with Audrey Cairo. Don't hesitate to reach out or to connect on Instagram on Let's Call Her V, or find all my other details on audreycairo.com/V and me. Thanks for listening.